A 16-year-old boy storms into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom with a case nobody believes is real. He isn't accusing a stranger, a bully, or a business. He's suing his own father because he didn't get the luxury car he believes he deserves. And the reason behind this shocking lawsuit cuts deeper than anyone expects. In a quiet Rhode Island neighborhood, a hard-working single father raises his son with every ounce of strength he has left. He works double shifts, saves every dollar, and hopes his child grows up to value honesty, humility, and gratitude. But somewhere along the way, something changes. His son becomes obsessed with status, wealth, and the illusion that owning a BMW or a brand new iPhone defines his worth. Their home turns into a battlefield of arguments, slammed doors, and accusations. When the father finally refuses to buy a brand new car the boy demands, the teenager takes a step no parent ever imagines. He files a lawsuit against the man who raised him. And today, Judge Frank Caprio must uncover how a family reached this heartbreaking point. But what happened next left the entire courtroom speechless. Br. 16-year-old Brandon Hale enters Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom with a confidence far beyond his age. He carries himself like someone who believes the world should bend for him. Designer hoodie, fresh white sneakers, the newest iPhone held loosely in his hand, notifications lighting up the screen from friends waiting to hear how his big day in court goes. He takes his seat without a hint of hesitation, unaware of the weight of the moment or the hearts he is about to bruise. His father, Daniel Hale, follows behind him, not with swagger but with exhaustion. His work uniform is still on. His eyes hint at a man who hasn't slept well in years. And in that quiet moment, the distance between them feels colder than winter air. The charge Brandon brings forward is startling. He claims his father emotionally damaged him by refusing to buy the brand new BMW he demanded for his 16th birthday. To him, it isn't a wish, a privilege, or a dream. It's a right. He insists he deserves the car because everyone at school has one, and because a car reflects status in his social circle. His tone is filled with impatience, annoyance, and entitlement, all of it wrapped around a belief that his father's only job is to fulfill his desires. Judge Frank Caprio listens quietly as Brandon lays out his accusations. He talks about embarrassment, humiliation, and the pain of being the only one in his group of friends without a luxury car. He never once mentions the effort his father puts into keeping their home stable. He never notes the bills, the late nights, the double shifts, or the sacrifices that have shaped his father's life for over 16 years. The young boy sees none of it, or perhaps he sees it and chooses not to care. Daniel stands silently, giving his son space to speak. He isn't angry, he isn't shocked, he looks defeated, as if months, maybe years of conflict have led to this heartbreaking moment. Judge Caprio turns toward him, sensing a deeper story behind the surface tension. And yet Brandon continues speaking with a sense of authority that doesn't match his age or experience. Why does a child so young believe the world owes him everything? Brandon explains that he already picked the BMW model he wanted. He memorized the price. He planned the color. He even bragged to classmates about driving it to school on the very first day of junior year. But when his father said they couldn't afford it, the teen didn't pause. Instead, he took the refusal as a personal attack, a betrayal of his needs. He began searching online for legal options and found a way to file a claim. And now, here he is, testifying against the man who carried him on his shoulders through childhood. Daniel finally speaks. His voice is steady. He describes saving what little money he can, trying to provide meals, pay rent, and cover school supplies. He talks about Brandon's growing obsession with luxury, status, and online influencers who flaunt cars worth more than homes. And he admits that he doesn't understand how his son drifted so far from the values he worked tirelessly to teach. As the two sit separated by emotion rather than distance, tension fills the room. Judge Caprio senses that this case isn't about a car at all. It's about a child starving for something he can't name, and a father holding on to hope by a thread. The judge leans forward, preparing to address the young boy's complaints. But before he can speak, Brandon interrupts him. The teen insists that money isn't the issue. He claims his father is choosing not to care, choosing not to provide, choosing to embarrass him on purpose. His words slice through the air like cold steel. And for the first time, Daniel's expression cracks, not with anger, but with a sadness so deep it could fill the room. At this exact moment, the story takes its first painful turn. And if you've ever seen a moment where entitlement collides with reality, drop a comment below if you think gratitude is disappearing in today's world. Judge Caprio takes a slow breath. His voice prepares to break open the truth behind the boy's accusations. But before he speaks, something unexpected happens. Brandon reveals a secret reason behind his resentment, and it stops Judge Caprio mid-sentence. Brandon's voice turns sharp as he reveals the reason he believes his father owes him the luxury car. It is not simply about the BMW's speed, color, or the status it brings. According to him, the car represents a promise he claims his father made years ago. Daniel looks confused at first, then deeply troubled, as if he recognizes a memory resurfacing in a distorted form. Brandon explains that when he was 12, he overheard his father telling a coworker that someday he hoped to buy his son a car he could be proud of. Brandon took those words as a contract, a guarantee written in stone. In his young mind, that dream matured into entitlement, and entitlement hardened into resentment. Judge Frank Caprio leans forward, sensing there's more. Daniel quietly admits that he did say those words, but the context was different. He dreamed of giving his son something special someday, something symbolic of love and hard work. But he never imagined his son would demand a $70,000 BMW before even earning a learner's permit. The misunderstanding reveals a painful gap between expectation and reality. Brandon doesn't stop there. He pulls out what he calls proof. It's a printed stack of screenshots from his social media accounts, messages, comments, even polls he posted, asking classmates which car he should get for his birthday. Hundreds of classmates voted on different models. Some encouraged him, some teased him, and many assumed he was bragging. Brandon explains that once the excitement spread at school, turning back felt impossible. He feared looking weak, poor, or irrelevant. And so, he doubled down. Why does a promise become a prison when pride gets involved? He believed the BMW was the only way to escape that embarrassment. Those screenshots show conversations filled with pressure, mocking, and expectations. Brandon insists that his father's refusal caused him emotional distress, claiming it destroyed his reputation at school. He paints a picture where his social world collapsed, all because Daniel said no. But then comes the bigger reveal. Daniel steps forward and pulls out a folder of his own evidence. Inside are bills, pay stubs, and a letter from his employer explaining that he recently lost one of his 2 jobs due to company downsizing. He didn't tell his son because he wanted to shield him from stress. He wanted Brandon to feel secure. That hidden struggle brings a stunned silence over the courtroom. Suddenly the story shifts. It moves from entitlement to misunderstanding, from resentment to heartbreak. Daniel reveals that he was saving to buy Brandon a safe used car, a dependable older model, something he could afford by working overtime. That car was meant to be a surprise, planned for the start of the school year. He explains this with quiet honesty, his voice trembling not from fear but from the weight of carrying a burden alone. Brandon looks stunned. He had no idea his father lost part of his income. He had no idea his father was still trying to give him something meaningful within his means. For a moment, the boy's confidence wavers. His breathing changes, his shoulders sink slightly. But the teenage pride still resists apologizing, still resists acknowledging the damage he caused. Judge Caprio studies both of them carefully. He reads each document, listens to every claim, and senses that this conflict runs deeper than finances. It's about a father trying to hold his family together, and a son trying to match a world built on status symbols and social pressure. And if this moment makes you think too many people judge worth by luxury instead of character, like this video if you believe gratitude matters more than gifts, Judge Caprio prepares to speak, ready to deliver clarity. But before he gives his thoughts, Daniel reveals one last piece of evidence, and it changes everything. The father's final document exposes a truth that turns the entire case upside down. Daniel lifts a single sheet of paper from the folder, a document far more powerful than screenshots or pay stubs. His hands tremble slightly as he passes it forward, and Judge Frank Caprio reads it in complete silence. It is a statement from Brandon's school counselor, written months before this case, explaining that Brandon had been struggling with insecurity, social pressure, and a growing belief that only luxury items could make him worthy among friends. The counselor urged Daniel to seek outside help, fearing the boy's self-esteem was collapsing under the weight of appearances. For the first time since the hearing began, Brandon's shoulders slump. He didn't know his father had spoken to the school. He didn't know the counselor had expressed such concern. The bravado he arrived with, the attitude, the pride, the entitlement, begins to crack. His face tightens as if he's holding back a storm he never prepared to face. Judge Caprio's voice turns soft but firm. He explains that self-worth built on possessions is fragile, that the chase for validation can swallow a person whole. Brandon tries to argue at first, but the counselor's words echo louder in his mind than anything his father or judge could say. That letter exposes a truth he's been avoiding. The expensive car was never about transportation at all. It was about filling a void. Why does a young heart believe a price tag can fix what understanding and love never had a chance to reach? The courtroom feels heavier as Brandon begins speaking, this time with a different tone. His voice shakes with frustration, not anger. He confesses that online influence consumed him. Every day he watched videos of teenagers flaunting Gucci backpacks, Prada shoes, and BMW keys, flashing in perfectly choreographed social posts. He believed that was normal, that he needed it, that his life was falling behind if he didn't keep up. Every refusal from his father felt like rejection. Every limitation felt like a personal failure. Then he admits something that stuns everyone listening. He says he wasn't just embarrassed about not having the BMW. He was ashamed of where they lived, ashamed of his father's job, ashamed of not being able to show off the way wealthier kids did. As the words spill out, Daniel looks as if the air is pulled from his lungs. Years of sacrifices reduced to shame. It cuts deeper than any accusation. At that moment, Brandon breaks. Tears fill his eyes. He tries to explain that he never meant to hurt his father. He just didn't know how to handle feeling less than the world he compared himself to. His voice cracks as he admits that every time he made fun of his own family situation with friends, it wasn't because he believed it. It was because he didn't want to be the kid who got laughed at first. He wanted to belong somewhere, anywhere. Judge Caprio listens with the patience of someone who has seen broken connections before. His words grow gentler, reminding Brandon that no one is defined by a car, a phone, or a brand. Not Prada, not Chanel, not BMW. He reminds him that gratitude is a treasure wealth can never replace. And if you've ever learned a lesson the hard way, hit that subscribe button, because moments like this shape hearts more than any luxury ever could. Daniel steps forward, unable to stay silent. His voice trembles as he explains that he worked extra hours not to impress anyone, but to give Brandon the stability he never had growing up. He sacrificed opportunities, hobbies, and rest so his son could study, play, and dream without fear. But hearing that his son felt ashamed of him, the words slice deeper than any lawsuit. What follows is a trembling silence. Two lives, standing at the edge of a truth that could either pull them together or tear them apart for good. Judge Caprio prepares to respond with a speech that might change everything. But just before he speaks, Brandon interrupts with a confession so unexpected that everyone in the room freezes. The boy admits a hidden act of betrayal, one that could shatter what little trust remains between them. Brandon's confession lands like a blow neither his father nor Judge Frank Caprio expected. His voice weakens as he admits that, weeks before filing the lawsuit, he secretly applied for a financing plan at a luxury dealership using his father's information, his name, his address, even his employment details. The moment the words escape him, Daniel's eyes widen in disbelief. Brandon insists he didn't mean harm. He just wanted to speed up the process, certain his father would eventually cave under pressure. But the dealership denied the application and sent a notice to their home, one that Brandon intercepted and hid. Daniel takes a slow breath, shaken not by anger, but by the realization that his son felt desperate enough to forge his identity. Judge Caprio leans back slightly, the weight of the moment settling over the room. He speaks with a calm depth that demands attention. He explains that what Brandon attempted was a serious act, something that could have brought legal consequences far beyond embarrassment. Brandon lowers his gaze, fully aware now that envy and insecurity had driven him into dangerous territory. Judge Caprio asks Daniel how he feels hearing all of this. Daniel tries to answer, but his voice cracks before the first word fully forms. He explains that he has spent years trying to teach Brandon responsibility, integrity, and gratitude. Yet somewhere along the way, those lessons were buried beneath social pressure and unrealistic expectations. He admits that learning his son tried to impersonate him hurts more than the lawsuit itself. It feels like a betrayal of trust, something far deeper than a disagreement over a car. Why does a moment of desperation blind a young heart to the consequences waiting on the other side? Judge Caprio begins his turning point speech, the type of message that has changed countless lives in his courtroom. He tells Brandon that life does not hand out worth in the form of luxury items. A BMW cannot replace character. A Gucci hoodie cannot replace empathy. An iPhone cannot fill emptiness. He draws a line between wanting something and believing one deserves it without effort. His voice becomes firm, reminding Brandon that entitlement is a shadow that grows when gratitude is missing. His tone softens. He explains that many young people fall into the same trap. Social comparison is a powerful force. Influencers proudly displaying expensive cars, and products make it seem like everyone is wealthy except you. He tells Brandon that feeling insecure doesn't make him a bad person, it makes him human. But allowing insecurity to control his choices, that is where the danger lies. Brandon's eyes begin to tear again as he listens. Judge Caprio continues, saying that real strength comes from understanding who you are, not what you own. He describes the sacrifices parents make: late nights, long shifts, skipped meals, and silent struggles to give their children lives they never had themselves. He reminds Brandon that every hour Daniel worked was an act of love, not obligation. Daniel quietly adds that he never wanted Brandon to feel poor or less than others. He wanted him to feel proud of their journey, even if it wasn't covered in luxury. His words tremble with sincerity, showing a father who loves without limits, even when the world misunderstands his intentions. ND. If you believe respect must be taught. B. Before privilege is given, drop a comment below if this truth hits home. Judge Caprio prepares to deliver his final ruling, one that could decide the future of their relationship. But before he announces it, Brandon whispers something so faint, so unexpected, that both Daniel and the judge freeze in place. The boy asks for a chance, a real one, not to win the case, not to demand the car, but to fix everything he broke. His voice is filled with fear and hope. Judge Caprio pauses, then delivers a decision that brings the entire courtroom to tears. Judge Frank Caprio lets the silence settle before he speaks. His voice shifts into something warm, steady, and full of understanding. He explains that while Brandon's actions were harmful, impulsive, and deeply misguided, the root of his behavior is not malice. It is pain. Pain from pressure, pain from comparison, pain from believing he needed luxury to matter. Judge Caprio makes it clear that healing is possible, but only if both father and son commit to rebuilding trust brick by brick. He announces his ruling with careful precision. The lawsuit is dismissed entirely. There will be no fine, no punishment, no legal consequence for Brandon, as long as he completes counseling sessions recommended by his school and attends them with his father. Judge Caprio stresses that this isn't a penalty, it is an opportunity to speak honestly, to understand each other, and to rebuild what has been lost. He adds that trust is not restored by gifts, but by time, effort, and humility. Brandon nods slowly, tears gathering again. He whispers that he's willing to do whatever it takes. He apologizes, not dramatically, not for attention, but with the quiet sincerity of someone who finally understands the weight of his mistakes. His voice breaks as he tells Daniel that he never hated him, never felt unloved, but simply felt like he was drowning in expectations. He didn't know how to escape. He admits he was wrong, deeply wrong. Why does it sometimes take losing everything to recognize the value of what we already had? Daniel steps closer, emotion rising in his chest. He tells Brandon that he never wanted perfection, only honesty, only effort, only love. He explains that he worked himself to exhaustion, not because he wanted applause, but because he wanted Brandon to have chances he never had. Hearing his son apologize softens a wound that felt impossible to heal. Daniel pulls himself together long enough to say he forgives him, not because the mistake was small, but because the bond between them is bigger than any car, any status symbol, or any argument. Judge Caprio continues with one final lesson. He tells Brandon that one day he will understand the value of hard work, and that achievements earned through effort shine brighter than any gift handed out without sacrifice. He urges him to build a future where gratitude stands taller than envy. His words carry the weight of years spent guiding young people back to their path. Then, turning to Daniel, he encourages him to keep believing in his son. He reminds him that every child loses their way at some point, and that what matters is the courage to return. Daniel nods, grateful for the judge's compassion and clarity. Suddenly, Brandon reaches into his pocket and reveals something no one expects, a small, crumpled note. It's the same note he wrote weeks earlier, listing the exact BMW model he wanted, along with reasons he deserved. He tears it slowly, piece by piece, until only scraps remain. He says he no longer wants the car. What he wants is another chance to be the son his father deserves. The courtroom softens. A few people wipe their eyes. Even Judge Caprio pauses, visibly moved. Moments like this remind everyone present that redemption doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives quietly, through humility. And if you believe every family deserves a second chance, hit that subscribe button, because stories of healing matter more today than ever. Judge Caprio wraps up the session with a warm reminder. Luxury fades. Love does not. He dismisses the case, but before father and son leave, he encourages them to spend the rest of the day together. No arguments, no judgment, only conversation. Brandon places a trembling hand on his father's arm. Daniel doesn't hesitate. He pulls his son into a gentle embrace, not caring who's watching, grateful that the boy standing beside him is finally ready to grow. But as they walk out together, Brandon surprises his father with one last promise, a promise that begins the healing they both prayed for. As the courtroom doors close behind them, father and son step into a future reshaped not by wealth, but by understanding. Brandon's final promise, that he will earn his first car with his own effort, marks the beginning of a new chapter neither of them expected when this case began. Daniel, relieved yet emotional, walks beside him with a heart finally allowed to breathe again. Judge Frank Caprio's message lingers long after the moment ends. Families break, families bend, but with honesty and love, families can also heal. This fictional story reminds us all that material things may shine, but gratitude glows far brighter. When pride falters and humility rises, miracles unfold in ways no luxury ever could. If this story touched you, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that second chances truly exist.